Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off our journey into the fascinating world of power dynamics. Today, we're exploring Law 2 from the 48 Laws of Power. Never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use enemies. Over the next few slides, we'll uncover how understanding these principles can give you a strategic edge in any situation. So, let's dive in and see what these laws can teach us about influence and control. Let's talk about a crucial principle here. Never put too much trust in friends, and instead, learn how to use enemies. This might sound a bit counterintuitive at first, but it's about understanding the nature of trust and power. Friends can sometimes be unpredictable. They may have your best interests at heart, but they can also become a liability if their loyalty shifts. Enemies, on the other hand, have clear motives, and understanding their intentions can give you an advantage. By observing and even subtly using your enemy's weaknesses, you can turn a potential threat into a strategic asset. This idea ties into the overall theme of mastering power and strategy. It's about being smart and calculated in how you navigate relationships. Remember, it's not about betrayal or manipulation just for its own sake, but about understanding the dynamics of trust and leverage to stay one step ahead. Let's talk about the dangers of friendship in a professional setting. Often, friends tend to hide their true feelings to avoid conflict, which can lead to misunderstandings down the line. They're also more prone to feelings of envy and ingratitude, especially when power dynamics shift. When you hire friends, they might see it as a form of condescension, which can breed secret resentment that's hard to detect. It's completely natural to want to bring friends into your team once you've attained a certain level of power. After all, you know them well, you like them, and it seems like the safest, most trustworthy choice. But, as we'll see, these good intentions can sometimes backfire if we're not careful. Recognizing these potential pitfalls helps us make more informed decisions and maintain healthier professional relationships. Let's talk about the utility of enemies and why they can actually be beneficial. First, consider the idea of fear versus love. You might think that having friends is always better, but in reality, you often have more to fear from friends than from enemies. If you find yourself without any enemies, sometimes it's wise to consider making some, because they can push you to grow. Next, think about sharpness. Without enemies, it's easy to become complacent, to grow lazy. An enemy at your gate, so to speak, keeps you sharp, focused, and alert. They serve as a constant reminder of what you're fighting for, helping you refine your cause and stay motivated. And finally, there's the loyalty paradox. A former enemy who you forgive and even hire can end up being more loyal than a friend. Why? Because they have more to prove, not just to you, but to themselves and the world. They want to demonstrate their loyalty and worth, which can make them more committed in the long run. So, in the context of our overall theme, understanding the role of enemies helps us see how challenge and opposition can actually serve as catalysts for growth, focus, and loyalty. As we look at this slide, we see how Basilius's hunger for power grew with every gift he received. Instead of feeling grateful for Michael III's kindness, he started to develop a sense of entitlement. It's important to understand that this shift from gratitude to greed was a key turning point. Eventually, that greed led him to commit a terrible act, murdering Michael III and seizing the throne for himself. Now, it's interesting to remember that Michael III had saved Basilius, a simple stable boy, from a wild horse. Out of gratitude and perhaps charm, Michael showered him with gifts, titles, and power, trusting that his friend would remain loyal. But as we see, that trust was betrayed. This event, the fall of Michael III, illustrates a critical lesson about transgression of the law. When personal ambition overrides moral boundaries, it can lead to destructive consequences. Basilius's story reminds us how the abuse of power and betrayal can have profound impacts on history and leadership. It ties into our overall theme about the importance of integrity and the danger of letting greed cloud judgment. Let's talk about the concept of observance of the law in this context. What Emperor Sung, also known as Taezu, did was quite strategic. He persuaded his generals to retire from their command roles and lead lives of wealth and nobility. In exchange, they would give up their power and influence. Essentially, he transformed what could have been a dangerous, potentially rebellious group, what we might call a den of wolves, into a group of wealthy, compliant, and somewhat distant friends. This move was crucial because it reduced the immediate threat of rebellion. Instead of trying to eliminate his generals outright, which could have sparked even more unrest, he chose a more diplomatic approach. He understood the risks. They could turn on him, just as they had with previous emperors. So, instead of risking a deadly confrontation, he invited them to a banquet, an act that might seem simple but was actually quite clever. This brings us to the idea of Emperor Sung's cup of wine. It symbolizes the subtle diplomacy and the delicate balance of power, offering wine, a gesture of friendship and trust, to keep potential enemies close and loyal. It's a reminder that sometimes maintaining stability involves strategic kindness and understanding, rather than force. Overall, this slide highlights how careful observance of the law and smart diplomacy can be powerful tools for a ruler to maintain control and ensure loyalty, especially when facing potential threats from within. Let's talk about the keys to power when it comes to hearing strategy. One of the most powerful moves you can make is turning an enemy into an ally. When you do this, you're not just gaining a supporter, you're gaining someone who is genuinely eager to wash away their past reputation and start fresh. It's about transforming opposition into loyalty. Now, if you're working with friends, it's crucial to maintain clear boundaries. Friendship is valuable, but when it comes to work, you need to keep professionalism in mind. Be aware that hearing a friend might feel like charity to them, so set expectations from the start to avoid misunderstandings. On the other hand, it's important to keep friends for friendship, but when it comes to building your empire, you want to focus on hearing for skill and competence. Competent people are the ones who will truly help your vision grow. Remember, competence builds the empire, while relying solely on friendship can sometimes lead to its downfall. So the key takeaway here is to strategically turn enemies into allies, maintain boundaries with friends, and prioritize skill over sentiment. All of these steps align with the overall theme of building power through smart, deliberate hearing decisions. A word of caution. Sometimes, as Voltaire humorously points out, we need to be careful about who we trust. His quote, "Lord, protect me from my friends, I can take care of my enemies," highlights a common paradox. Often, our friends can unintentionally cause us more harm than our enemies, because we might be more vulnerable or less cautious around them. This reminds us that trust needs to be earned and maintained carefully, especially when it comes to relationships that influence us the most. In the context of our overall theme, being aware of influences and making mindful decisions, this slide serves as a reminder to evaluate who truly has our best interests at heart. So always stay vigilant, even with those closest to you. Because sometimes, the greatest risks come from trusted sources. Let's talk about one of the keys to maintaining power: emotional control. It's important to keep a certain distance in all professional dealings. This distance isn't about being cold or unkind, but rather about creating a space where you can assess people objectively. When you're too emotionally involved, it becomes difficult to judge someone on their true merit or how useful they are to your goals. Instead, personal feelings can cloud your judgment, which can be risky in a leadership position. Now, this idea of maintaining distance ties directly into the value of a clear perspective. Power often depends on our ability to see people and situations rationally. If we're emotionally attached, like with friends, our judgment can become skewed. We might overlook their mistakes or ignore their shortcomings, thinking it's all about loyalty or friendship. But that can backfire later, when those overlooked issues become bigger problems. That's why pragmatism should always take precedence over emotion. Being practical means focusing on what's best for your objectives, not just on personal feelings. By keeping this emotional distance, you ensure that decisions are based on rational analysis, not on transient emotions. This is a crucial part of exercising power effectively and responsibly. Let's talk about loyalty and performance over time. Often, when we hire someone who was once an acquaintance or even a friend, we see their performance initially improve. But over time, it can plateau or even decline. Why? Because they might start feeling entitled, thinking they've earned their spot without needing to put in extra effort. It's a common challenge in managing relationships within teams. On the other hand, when someone who was previously seen as an enemy or outsider joins us, their loyalty and performance can actually skyrocket. They're eager to prove themselves, to show their true worth and earn respect. This motivation can lead to remarkable growth and contribution. So, the key takeaway here is about understanding these dynamics. Loyalty and performance aren't static. They change over time based on how individuals perceive their relationships and their purpose within the team. Recognizing this helps us better manage and motivate people, no matter their starting point. It ties into the broader idea that relationships and perceptions drive long-term success more than initial impressions alone. Now, let's talk about a reversal when it comes to using friends. Sometimes, when things go wrong, a friend can serve as a convenient scapegoat. Because they are close to us, their mistakes or missteps might seem like a tragic necessity rather than a calculated sacrifice. This way, we can protect our reputation by shifting blame onto them. While this approach is generally dangerous and ethically questionable, it does highlight an important point. Friends can be useful for doing the dirty work we can't be seen doing ourselves. Their affection and loyalty often make them more willing to take risks or undertake tasks that we might avoid ourselves. In this context, the scapegoat and dirty work are closely linked. Friends become the go-to people for handling uncomfortable or damaging tasks because their closeness and trust make it easier to manipulate or leverage them for our benefit. Remember, this is a strategic, if morally questionable, tool to maintain your image and control. Now, let's take a moment to acknowledge the sources of the images we've seen throughout this presentation. As you can see here, the first image comes from Ancient Origins Net, which provides valuable historical visuals. This particular image depicts the whipping boy, illustrating a unique form of punishment used in medieval times. Moving on, the second image is from Wikimedia Commons and shows Song Tezu, the founder of the Song dynasty, highlighting important historical figures. The third image is from World History.org and offers a visual of a significant event or artifact, helping us better understand the context of these times. Lastly, we have an illustration from Vectizi.com, which humorously depicts a modern concept of betrayal or backstabbing, tying into themes of trust and deception we've discussed earlier. These sources are crucial because they give authenticity to our visual content and connect us to the broader historical and cultural narratives. Remember, understanding where these images come from helps us appreciate their significance and the stories they tell.